25th Hour Radio Show.
Hey there, Robert. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Frank. What's going on, buddy?
I'm good. I was just waiting on you guys.
You know, the last time we talked to you, it's been almost to a year to the date, man. Did you know that?
Wow. It's been that long?
It's kind of like an anniversary show.
Well, let's see. I retired as the national champion of Mexico for MMA.
Oh, wow.
I was telling you guys last time how in this country I'm censored. I'm not even allowed to be heard from, and I'm blacklisted. I'm not even allowed on the to go to events because of the unfair trade practices that go on in martial arts. It just amazes me that the Federal Trade Commission actually is just like looking the other way. You know?
Well, you're going to be heard on the 25th hour.
And I'm writing it's embarrassing to my country because I got to be honest with you guys. I go all over the world, and people are laughing at my country because they say, first of all, you're a bunch of hypocrites, you're liars. Look at you. You're national champion. You got all these things. You don't appear in the press. Nobody talks about you there. You know, it's because, you know, you say we're corrupt, but the truth is you guys are corrupt. We're just open about it. That way we're honest.
Well, that's why we want to have you on the show, you know, Frank, to set the record straight and to talk about a few things you got going on. We were speaking earlier today. You were telling me about you got a book coming out here pretty soon. What's that about?
Yeah, I've heard so much stuff over the years about ninjas and how people have framed it and how people are being attacked, including myself, regarding it. And so I'm coming out with a book, and I'm calling it Ninjas Are Bullshit. And I got the title from a guy who runs a YouTube series called Enter the Dojo. And he poses as this guy, Master Ken, and he had an episode called Ninjas Are Bullshit. Mm-hmm. And I laughed because what he was saying was so true. I had to laugh at the nonsense that's going on with these people who just take themselves way too seriously and really don't even know the real etymology involved as far as the word goes. They don't really understand the real history of what it is, and it's just ridiculous. I mean, it's just like saying I'm a real boxer and everybody else isn't.
So,
you know,
so what can we expect out of this book? What are you talking about in it?
Well, in the book, obviously, I'm going to expose a lot of how all these magazines are vertical, and they have they obviously function with a conflict of interest. But more important, I'm going to dissipate a lot of the rumors. Like, for example, I'll give you an example. A lot of people think the ninja were divided into two camps: the Koga and the Iga. And you'll see this in all the movies, you know, the Koga trying to kill the Iga and what have you. But the reality is the Koga and Iga were really like organized crime families. And a lot of times, they fought each other. But the majority of the time, they're actually working together to figure out how they're going to make themselves rich. And the sad thing is, though, prior to that time period, they were really the first movement in Japan trying to self-govern themselves. And that was in the Iga and Koga provinces at that time, or Miyashiga prefectures. And they were really trying to govern themselves. And when that really became clear to, you know, the major daimyo at the time, Lord Oda Nobunaga, he and excuse me if I'm not pronouncing it correctly. But
well, you're probably pronouncing it a lot better than I could.
Anyways, you know, he basically, you know, made this huge end game and just basically wiped them out. And he did that in let me think here. He did that, I think it was in the 16th century, 1580 is when he did it. And so, you know, that really spelled the end of the ninja, because ninja really were our special forces is what they were. A lot of people think that, you know, they're this assassins and what have you, but that really didn't happen until like the 17th century, and the ninja were around for hundreds of years before that.
Well,
and functioning more along the lines of like scouts. They function more along the lines of infiltrating the enemy, and also as working as counter terror groups. You know, just like we see with our special forces today. I mean, the roles identical. If you really look at what it took to be a ninja and what it took to be special forces soldiers today, they're almost identical.
Well, I had seen something, and I don't remember where it was, but it was talking about the ninja, and basically what they said was, and I don't know how true this is because you know how facts get jumbled up, but basically what they were saying is that these people were highly trained, in the special art, but they just worked around, and I don't know if it was a lord of the house or whatever, but they just worked around his property, like as gardeners and stuff like
that. That's the 17th century. When they were conquered and destroyed, you understand, ninja used to have their own castles at one time. They had their own networks. I mean, they were the image of what the ninja were. You could even say, you could compare them sometimes to the Knights Templar. I mean, it's a real interesting thing, but they were sort of like the Japanese version of them. And they had their own rituals, and they had their own, what people call ninja magic, or their own version of occultism.
So how far does the ninja go back? How far does the ninja go back? Are they go way back?
Well,
what would be
first of all, the ninja aren't even Japanese. Let's start right there.
Okay.
I hate to break a lot of people's bubbles, but the earliest uses of the word, that you see the way it's spelled, Shinobi and all that, comes from China. It's in Dover, and also it was used in the 4th century, and some people tell me as early as the 2nd century, and the word ninja comes from the word renji, or renji, which is like ninja, and it's or henji, something like that, and it's 4th century Chinese, in Kiji, and period, and but the whole thing is, if you look at the Japanese texts themselves, and this is why I laugh at a lot of these guys who keep arguing with me, oh, ninjas are Japanese and exclusive to Japan. I go, really? I go, and what are you basing that on? I go, oh, the Bansan Shukai, and that's the ninja scroll, the holy grail, okay, of all the ninja scrolls. I said, well, okay, what's the first chapter about? What do you mean? So what's the first chapter about? Well, what do you mean? Finally, I have to laugh at him. I go, you never read it, did you? He says, because it says right in the first chapter it comes from China.
So where did the ninja learn their skills? I mean, over time, where did they learn how to do the things that they...
Well, they had different schools, just like how did special forces learn their skills? How did our special forces learn their skills? Some of the guys would go overseas. They would learn techniques like when we set up our anti-terror units for the U.S. Army, they went right over to the SAS and learned how the SAS were doing it, and then they came back and did it. I mean, even our American Rangers, how did the American Rangers get started? They got started by going over to England prior to, them going to combat in World War II, and they formed their units by studying the commandos. It was the commandos who set up them. So the same thing happens in terms of like the Japanese ninja. They are really trained by the Koreans, they're trained by the Chinese, they're trained by people who are more adept at insurgency warfare. And that's what we're talking about, insurgency. Because the Japanese mind is very regimented and very group-oriented, and it's fixated. I mean, and so the idea of free thinking, independence, it was a foreign concept. It was introduced to them through Prince Regent Shotoku, who unified Japan and actually built the Japanese government based on the Chinese model. So that's where that comes from.
How far, and just looking back in antiquity, how far do you think, and you probably know, how far did the ninjas branch out as far as touching on other continents? You hear the Vikings traveling and different things like that. How far?
Oh, they're still alive today. People don't understand. The ninja became the Yamaguchi Gumi, the organized crime that you see in Japan today, and they made major inroads in China in the 1930s under the and people don't even talk about this. I mean, I'm probably going to get myself in trouble for even mentioning the name, but there was a group, and they were called the Roninkai. You never hear that name. you'll hear the name Jinyosha, the Black Ocean Society, and you'll hear the name Kukurukai, which is the name of the Black Dragon Society that everybody kind of knows around the world. Am I losing you here?
No, you're good.
Okay. So the Roninkai, what you understand is that was founded by, believe it or not, one of my descendants in my lineage by the name of Tanaka, Hiro Tanaka, and who's from the Tanaka Roof family, which is a ninja family. And they are ones of the people who actually started to look at invading one of the things, and they had a 100-year plan of invading the United States and other regions around the world. And they used a principle from one of the ninjas called Yoshitsune, and that all the principles and battle plans for Yoshitsune is what became Pearl Harbor.
Okay. Now, why do you think that you adapted so well to this style?
Because it's a style that really is first of all, ninjutsu is not even it's not a martial art. Okay? So because it wasn't a martial art, I was able to bring in my own fighting skills and mix it with a lot of the strategies and philosophies and things that I think a person should know in order to really defend himself. I don't think it's enough that you know how to punch and kick and even shoot a gun. Okay? If I know how to take chemicals that are, I'm sitting in a restaurant and I can take some simple items and put it together and I could disarm you with that. That to me is real self-defense. That's where I want to be. I want to have the most options for myself. So that's why I ended up doing what I call Dux Ninjutsu. I took my style, which I called Dux. I couldn't make it any more obvious to anybody than that. And the ninjutsu is really the esoteric side of martial arts. And I matched the two together, and that's how I ended up with Dux Ninjutsu. And then as I got more schools, we called it Dux Runin Ninjutsu because Ru means family or school of thought, because it was beyond myself at that point. And so that's where we're at. And I laugh at people who get all uptight about, insisting ninjutsu. Even the term ninjutsu is like a feudal term and nobody should be using it, who isn't like doing this traditional martial arts stuff, when the reality is the term ninja didn't even come into being until the Taisho period, which is like around 1912, okay? So when I used these terms, this is before the ninja boom. This is before they were selling this image, that became Ninja Turtles and the ninja series that you see and, being played out, etc. And sadly, a lot of people I feel have been really ripped off because there is no such thing as a ninja fighting style. If you got a book and says it's a ninja fighting style, I have news for you. You just got taken. There's nothing in history, no historical text that lays it down. And the reason for it is this. Ninja were not separate and apart from the samurai. That's another thing my book goes into. The only school that has actual, what I call ninja manuals, curriculums that are legitimately acknowledged as being Koru, okay, curriculums, belong to two schools of samurai. Tenshin Shinto, Katori Shinto-ryu. All right? Tenshin Shoden, Katori Shinto-ryu being one of them. And that's the oldest school of the samurai arts in Japan, and it's in the curriculum. So we know in the 15th century, samurai were learning ninjutsu, okay? And it wasn't even called ninjutsu, it was called shinobi no jitsu. Ninjutsu is actually, again, a 20th century term.
You're talking about training and the amount of intense training that goes into the fighting style. I have to ask you about this, and sure. I don't think I got a chance to last time. I want to talk about Denmark, the death touch. Yep. Is it death touch?
I perform it. I do it. Mm-hmm.
Now, is that something that you came up with, or is that from ancient times?
Well, my studies led me to learning how to do it. Let's put it that way. I'm self-taught on the subject. Mm-hmm. wasn't until years later that, Grandmaster Day, who was entrusted with teaching me the last part of it, because you do not teach it until a guy's at least age 54. That's the golden rule, because a person of that age is seasoned and they're not liable to use it, because it is literally, you literally can take life and nobody can stop you, and literally nobody will even notice you doing it if you really know what you're doing. I did a test for the Technical Institute of Mexico where they actually took a thermographic camera and they shot me, and you could see that I was able to change the vibrational energy in my body in the heat and the polarity. That actually, if you looked at my arms, they were white on the thermographic scale, where the rest of me was almost like a small red and then a green on the outside, whereas everybody else is just red. And then they put in something cool, then you see the different colors.
So now, for some of our listeners that might not know what the Denmark is, can you kind of explain how?
Well, there's two versions of it, and this is what people understand. The Denmark, is called depth. What that is learning how to judge the human body, because there's a thing of how the energy flows through the body. Knowing how to hit a sequence of points on the body, and it literally tells the brain to shut down and just kills the person. It's no different than if you plant a suggestion in somebody's head, and 24 hours they die on the road. Okay, we know that happens. So you're literally able to mess with a person that way. And there's many different ways you can do it. One is you can hit a person and inflict just a minimal amount of damage that isn't detectable in the moment, but let's say you tear a heart valve. And in ancient times, I tear your heart valve, it's over. There's no heart surgery, you're gone. And so that's one of the methodologies that's used. Another one is, I don't even go into it, but there's any number of things where you literally switch the body off. And I do a demonstration, and my students do it now to get their black. And what they do is we have a stack of like bricks. And in between the bricks, we'll put different densities of things. Like one of my students, if you go online, you can see it. He does a break where he does two bricks, and in between them, he sandwiches a piece of window glass, very fragile window glass. And you can see him hit it, and the bottom brick, of course, breaks, and everything else is okay, just like we do in the movie Bloodsport. Mm-hmm. And I do the same thing. I've done it for PM Magazine, any number of television stations. It's out there on YouTube, I think. It's all over the place. But that's what you learn to do. And when I broke bulletproof glass, it's the same thing. You really are. If you try to use muscular force, you'll never do it. Just can't do it. But if you use vibrational energy, if you know how to change the harmonics of your own body, and believe me, we have that ability. You're able to disrupt the harmonics of another person's body, and they shut down. And they're doing now experiments with that, with sound energy, where they're actually taking what looks like giant speakers, they'll aim them at bridges, and you'll see the bridges literally, come apart.
You were speaking earlier about catching flack from people in this country for what you say and what they're not allowing you to say. Do you have, what's your major opponents out there? I mean, who are these people?
Well, without mentioning names, one guy is an actual guy who is a well-known, famous martial artist. Well, I'll say there. Hell with it. You know what? There's a guy like Bob Wall. He makes an appearance in
Enter the Dragon.
Enter the Dragon.
Yeah.
The bad guy, right? Yeah, well, but what Bob doesn't tell you about himself is him and me had a run-in over the years, starting when I was 14 years old, and I snuck into a black belt testing at Chuck Norris School in Torrance, and then they tried to hurt me, and I kicked his ass. That's the bottom line. And I guess he's been sore about it ever since. Just talk crap about me. And then, on top of that, and I never really want to say this, but the guy, is calling me a fraud, and the reason for it is, part of the reason is I was involved in a case that actually sent Bob to jail for fraud, real estate fraud. So he's got a personal bone to pick with me. Another guy, I'm not going to mention. He's older now, but he was involved in the murder of my friend's, uncle, and I was there as a kid. He did a year's time in jail. The other guys are, another guy who's pretty well known for it is a guy named Stephen Hayes, who appeared on the scene, claims to be the first American ninja, and when there's people in his own lineage that were Americans who had learned it. And he cut a really good deal with, Black Belt Magazine.
Yeah, you see Stephen a lot in Black Belt Magazine, and we talked about Black Belt in our interview a year ago, and I don't want to get into that because people can go online and check that interview out. But I was going to ask you about Stephen Hayes because he is such a prominent name in the martial arts community, especially in ninjutsu. I was going to ask him the role he plays with, the role you have with him and your relationship with him.
Well, I have no feud with the guy other than academic. But the thing that's really I find disturbing, and the reason I brought him up is because every time I turn around, I'm being told by people I'm not allowed to go to events because the guy's using his political muscle to say that if I show up there, then he's going to pull his support, and all the students and everybody are not going to come to the event, so he's preventing me from that. I've been told by, the editors of magazines I'm not allowed in the magazines because of him. And basically the guy has basically done everything, and I've heard stories that he was behind paying off a reporter to write this, hatchet job on me in the 1980s when Bloodsport came out that literally destroyed my life. It really, here I am being accused of all these horrible things, and I'm not given any opportunity anywhere to answer the allegations. And he's appeared in things like saying, for example, in the magazine, I was featured in when I did get featured, I was featured in I think it was a Kick magazine, an offshoot magazine, and we use the term shidoshi. Shidoshi just means director. Okay, it's in the Japanese dictionary. But here he appears a month later in the magazine saying how the term was invented for him, that basically inferring anybody who uses that term is a fraud because it was invented for him by his instructor. Meanwhile, when I have a chance and I go back to magazines and even ask to pay for the advertising space to answer that allegation, I was denied the opportunity. And it appears in the Kenyosha English-Japanese dictionary. I mean, it's right there where the term shidoshi means direction, like I was saying. So it's things like that continually are happening. And it raises all sorts of questions, and it makes you really question, okay, what's really going on here? Is it him doing it? Is the magazine editor doing it? What's going on? And I reach out to the guy, and the guy refuses to, I guess, basically talk to me. So I think that says a lot right there.
Well, man, we ain't got too much time, and I want to make sure. I don't think we talked about this earlier or last year. Was your school, man? Let's talk about your school. Let's plug your school a little bit. What do you got going on there?
Well, I'm thinking of starting a school. I haven't started one. I'm working on trying to start a school that's a nonprofit school. I'm trying to get in the inner city here with these kids in Seattle, and that's it. And going for my nonprofit status and getting back and teaching. I basically left the United States because I couldn't practice my martial arts here, and I've been teaching all over the world, which is kind of sad.
So you're basically traveling around the world, giving seminars and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm scratching a living for myself. I'm not a rich guy. A lot of people think I'm a rich guy. I'm not.
Oh man, who is?
A lot of people made money off me. I mean, there's toys made in my name. I can tell you that much. Never saw a dime from it, but.
Yeah,
all sorts of things.
That's a whole nother interview right there.
Yeah, well, it's okay. It's
What about let's go with social media, man. Let's bring some people to your social media page, if you don't mind. What's your Facebook page? Where can people find you? Are you on Twitter or any kind of website?
You gotta find me under Frank W. Dux or the real Frank Dux. Those are the two places you got to go to on Facebook. But Frank W. Dux is where you got to go because I got all these people impersonating me out there.
Yeah, I've went on Facebook and I type in Frank Dux and you see 50 Frank Dux and they all got your picture on it.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, it's kind of
But
makes
it's
you
Frank.
wonder.
It's Frank W. Dukes, right?
Right. Because I can't use my own name.
What about you? Got a website or anything?
I don't. Yeah, go to the website. It actually belongs to my student. You can go to a website actually called frankwdukes.com. Same thing.
Okay.
And you can go to FAST, and that's FASST, then Dukes, DUX, RYU, Dukesru. So it's fastdukesru.com.
Well, Frank, man, I appreciate you taking time out, and it's good to hear from you again.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I really feel bad about talking bad about other people. I just don't like doing that. I got to tell you, I shouldn't have said anything, and I'm regretting it. I'm not that kind of person, and I don't like to talk ill about anybody. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, it's part of your journey. You know, we all have a journey.
Well, you know what? Here's the thing, and maybe this will be helpful for your people, and I want people to know. As much as these people have hurt me, I kind of like in my heart, I just forgive them, and I just look at them as people that aren't really developed at a very high level, because I've done nothing to hurt these people, and I would still offer them my friendship. I just look at it, whoever's doing that, they're obviously trying to compensate for something else. There's obviously something else driving them, and I've got to feel sorry for a person like that.
You know,
because
you really, truly cannot have inner peace until you give forgiveness.
Yep, and that's what I've learned to do, and I've encountered a lot of things in my life. Believe me, a lot of things, the ugly side of celebrity, and the only way to survive it is that. And it feels sorry for a lot of people. Like, I'm seeing them having meltdowns right now, like we see on the media.
Yeah. Well, that's
everywhere.
the price you pay for being in the public eye, you know.
Yes, it is.
Well, it is a price. It's just a way to deal with it, and it's unfortunate a lot of these kids don't get that chance.
Well, buddy.
To learn the tools. You know what I mean? I watched it destroy Van Damme. He was a great guy. I want to say that. He was a terrific guy. When I met him, we had butts. And then I watched, him become a victim of temptation. Things were thrown at him, and he wasn't prepared for it. And it's unfortunate, but it's, he was on a slippery slope, and I got to give him a lot of courage because he came forward and he talks about it, and GQ magazine and a few other things, and that's kind of brave of him because he's trying to help other people maybe learn from his mistakes. So.
Well, Frank, I appreciate you coming on. We're sure to have you back on again here in the future.
Well, I'm glad to be on, Robert, and you take care.
All right, buddy.
All right.
The 25th Hour Radio Show.